Welcome to today's segment on Into the Future of the GC, Mindset and Behaviours. Cette session fait suite aux intéressantes discussions qui ont eu lieu lors du camp des carrières 2021, plus précisément au panel sur les compétences nécessaires pour les carrières de demain. If you'd like to know more on the subject, we invite you to check the digital standards, they mention mindset and behaviors we will discuss today. The link will be shared in the chat. Alors, je me présente, je m'appelle Maude Laporte-Roy, je suis agent libre au programme des agents libres du Canada. Je suis présentement en affectation, en vérification interne à la Commission de la fonction publique. I'm also co-chair of the NCRYPN, the National Capital Region Young Professional Network. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I'm joining you from is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since the time immemorial. We are grateful to have the opportunity to present in this territory. This session will be bilingual. We will alternate between French and English. Please feel free to ask your question in the official language of your choice. As we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space and question by using the Q&A button in the language of your choice. Of course, you can vote for the questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. Vous pouvez partager vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix en utilisant le bouton questions et réponses. Tout au long de la séance, vous pouvez voter sur les questions que vous voudriez entendre en cliquant sur le petit pouce en l'air. Today, we have three panelists joining us. They will share their expertise and thoughts around today's topic. So let's meet them. We'll start with my fellow free agent, Natasha.
You're on mute, Natasha.
Of course. That's why I asked if you could hear me while I was on mute. These are technology issues that I should be familiar with because I've been a remote employee for a while now. But anyway, my name is Natasha Khan, and I'm from London, Ontario. I'm a free agent, and I've been working remotely, like I said, since before the pandemic. It's been 3 years for me working this way. I've worked for the federal government since 20 years ago. But like many of us parents do, I put my family first, and I had my family for the first part of my career and put my growth on the back burner so I could raise my family. I have 4 kids of my own and 2 stepchildren, so 6 in total. And in the past 3 years, I've really just dove into my career and started growing that as the kids have been getting older and I have more time to do so. I've worked really hard in those 3 years, and I've gained experience through curiosity by having a modernized mindset, and through specific learned skills that I've acquired through observation and mentorship by some amazing public servants who I really admire. I'm obsessed with continual learning. I love working in places where trust, collaboration, and empathy are the values of the department and the group or the team that I'm working with. Currently, I just finished a great assignment over at PSPC, working in their human-centered design office as a UX researcher and designer. And I literally just started this week at Transport Canada in their communications shops, where I will be leading their coordinated events and working on some of their transformation files. And on the side of my desk, I also volunteer for Flex GC, where I do mostly their communications, but I'm also supporting the public servants who are working in this new normal and that are pivoting during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's a little bit about me. I feel very lucky and humbled to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm like, what a busy person, Natasha, you are. We'll now go to Diana Bousseau. Donc, Diana Bousseau, si tu veux te présenter.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Mon nom est Dina Bousseau. Je suis directrice des ressources humaines stratégiques et de développement des programmes au Conseil de recherche en sciences naturelles et en génie du Canada et au Conseil de recherche en sciences humaines. On les appelle NSERC and SHARC. J'ai commencé là cette année. Alors, j'ai travaillé pendant plus de 10 ans dans une société d'État et j'ai occupé plusieurs postes au sein des ressources humaines, bien sûr. Donc, j'ai une formation beaucoup plus, une maîtrise en administration publique, un baccalauréat en ressources humaines que j'ai eu à Québec. Donc, j'ai vécu 9 ans à Québec, à la ville de Québec, avant de déménager ici. J'ai aussi 2 enfants, 2 petites filles de 14 et 11 ans bientôt. Alors, moi, je suis une personne qui adore apprendre. Alors, j'apprends continuellement. Je m'occupe de divers programmes dont l'équité en emploi, les langues officielles. Je m'occupe aussi de la diversité culturelle et de l'équité, diversité et inclusion. Et puis aussi des politiques et certains autres programmes comme le programme d'évaluation de rendement. En fait, je m'occupe de beaucoup de choses qui n'ont rien à voir avec la paye, comme je le dis souvent. Donc, comme Natacha le mentionnait, je suis aussi une personne qui adore le mentorat. Donc, j'ai appris beaucoup avec certaines personnes qui ont su être des mentors pour moi dans ma vie et je trouve que c'est quelque chose qui est extraordinaire, surtout dans un environnement comme celui qu'on vit présentement. Donc, et aussi, donc je suis ici aujourd'hui pour partager certaines de mes expériences. Donc, j'ai hâte de partager ça avec vous. That's about it for me. I'll have to say more after. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Merci beaucoup, Diana Bou. On a très hâte d'entendre tes expériences, justement. And last but not least, Charlie Tao.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. My name's Charlie. I've been currently at the Privy Council office, been here for just a little bit over 5 years, working on Beyond 2020. One little thing that many of you might know about is the Innovation Fair. I have the privilege of being the project lead for that event since 2017, and the rest is history. I've been with the public service for about 9 years now. I'm joined a little bit after 2011. Right out of university, and have seen so many different changes, ups and downs through the last few years, and it's really given me a great perspective on where I am today, and happy to be joined by my panelists, and big shout out to Natasha who I've worked with, and I'm happy to see the rest of the hour. Thanks.
Thank you, Charlie. Alors, commençons sans plus tarder avec une première question que je vais adresser à tous les panélistes. Beyond 2020 focus on how we do the work from a people perspective. Future of work experts all agree that the human aspect will be essential. What are these essential human skills and where can we develop them? So I will start with Charlie for a little change.
Thank you. So maybe I'll throw out a few to start, and I know there's so many aspects to this, and from my perspective, a few things that really jump out when it comes to our current situation right now, and how we could really help us move forward. Number one is the ability to show empathy. Oftentimes, I believe that's important, no matter whether we're in person or virtually, the ability to understand situations, and that's where really the part of my introduction to it is the user experience aspects. We often jumped in trying to figure out what people want, but how do we empathize with people's situations and their needs? So that's number one. Number two is active listening. I think now in a virtual world, it's more important than ever for us to actively listen, to really understand what's behind what people are saying, and the ability to trust. I think that's a huge one, especially now. We don't get the human to human interaction. Oftentimes we lose that aspect, and that's where communication is really key, and that's like a 3.5 if you will, that I'll throw in there. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Charlie, we now move to Diana Bou.
Je vais rajouter juste quelques petites choses sur ce que Charlie a dit. En fait, pour moi, en plus de l'empathie et puis la capacité de faire confiance aux autres, je dirais la conscience de soi. Il faudrait qu'on apprenne à se connaître de plus en plus dans cet environnement dans lequel on vit. On a vu cette dernière année avec les événements qu'on a vécus. Il est important de se connaître, de connaître ses limites parce qu'il faut savoir à un moment donné dire non et puis aussi s'arrêter un peu. Donc, ça a un impact, tout ce qu'on fait a un impact sur notre santé physique et aussi mentale. Et l'autre chose que je dirais aussi, il va falloir de plus en plus apprendre à naviguer dans un environnement ambigu, complexe. Donc, c'est ça qu'on vit encore. Donc, il faut être confortable dans quelque chose comme ça. Et la compétence culturelle, je dirais, serait aussi quelque chose d'important dans le sens que de plus en plus, on travaille comme leader ou comme employé dans des environnements très, très diversifiés. Donc, avoir cette compétence culturelle serait quelque chose qui nous mènerait un peu plus loin dans ce qu'on fait. Bien entendu, il y a d'autres choses comme l'intelligence émotionnelle, on en parle tout le temps, la pensée critique. Bon, la communication, on en a parlé un peu, mais on travaille de plus en plus à distance aussi. Donc, la communication a changé, la manière dont on communique, la collaboration devient de plus en plus difficile. Donc, tout ça, c'est des capacités qu'on devrait un peu plus cultiver et puis développer ou maintenir si on les a déjà. Alors, je te redonne la parole, Maud. Merci.
Merci, Diana Bou. What about you, Natasha? What do you think those skills are?
Well, a lot of what my colleagues said resonates with me. The fact of the matter is that we've had to develop these human skills because, frankly, the pandemic has forced us to shift our mindset. Since March 2020, we've all had to adopt to working remotely. We've had to learn how to use virtual tools for connections. We've juggled work and childcare. We've shared our spaces with our partners and our parents and our kids. It's the first time that we've lived through a pandemic of this magnitude, and we've also lived through multiple lockdowns. So in order to adapt to this massive disruption to our lives, we have to develop and adopt new skills that are reflective of the future of work. I don't think it's a bad thing, though. I think in every tragedy, there is a silver lining, and I think this might be the silver lining. The skills, in my opinion, that are good to have, for everyone from the top down in a department, is a philosophy that I've seen a lot, and it's represented through Beyond 2020, and in other departments they've adopted it in different ways. But really, you need to have a growth mindset, which is like self-awareness and continual learning. You need to have an agile mindset, which is adaptability, resilience, and boy, have we ever practiced that mindset this year. An inclusive mindset, which is like your empathy, trust, collaboration, and your inclusion. And an innovative mindset, which is creativity and curiosity. These are the human skills, in my opinion, for what's needed to adapt and continue working in this new future of work environment. As someone who's worked in user design, we see this kind of mindset. So that's just my opinion. I think that's how we do it.
That's very interesting. And it comes to the question, so you just talk about user design. So how does empathy relate to user design, in your opinion?
Well, we as user designers try to design systems and services in a human-centered way. So what does that mean? It means exploring as we go, analyzing at every step, active listening, as Charlie mentioned, and designing something that works for that particular journey. We look at the pain points, the wins, the moments that matter, and that's the journey that we design as designers. Human-centered designers or user designers are designing for. So when I think about this from an empowering staff perspective, empathy in that user design needs to include all the components that I mentioned above, like previously, but also the inclusive mindset. And that's kind of where I'm going. I think that by doing this, we understand how departments, units, and teams, how they are doing when it comes to trust, relationships, and culture. Good leaders also involve their staff and bring them along for that journey. They involve them in the discussions at every step. And those discussions really help depict what kind of change we're going to create. This transformation and modernization of the government, we've been witnessing that across the system in the past year. And I can think of departments that are doing it right now. this is like shameless plug, I'm going to say Transport Canada, for example, and I'm not just saying that because I just started working there, but I noticed this before, and in fact, it's why I chose to work there. The engagement on social media, the pulse surveys, the scan across the system from the top down out into the virtual spaces, because that's where we all are right now. They were asking everyone, not just TC employees, to share their ideas, to contribute to the voice that helped them rewrite their playbook. And if you haven't seen their plays on all things remote work, I highly recommend that you go and take a peek at that. It's really worth it. You can go on Twitter and find it. Someone has shared it, I'm sure. But in my opinion, that's a great example of how user research and UX design from a human-centered and empathy-driven way works.
Thank you. And you talked a bit about like COVID and the present situation we're in. And I have a question for Diane Abou. Comment est-ce que la COVID a fait ressortir l'empathie dans notre milieu de travail comme jamais auparavant?
Une excellente question. Je veux dire, avant 2020, bien entendu, on savait que l'empathie existait et que c'était une compétence détenue par certains de nos leaders et certaines personnes. Mais c'est avec la pandémie que l'empathie a pris de l'ampleur en quelque sorte, est devenu quelque chose comme, c'est devenu un incontournable au sein de nos organisations et sur la façon dont on agit. Tout d'un coup, c'est devenu une sorte d'arrêt qu'on recherche chez nos leaders. Avec la pandémie, on s'est rendu compte en fait qu'on était tous des êtres humains. Je pense que c'est ce qui est ressorti de ça, c'est que l'être humain en nous est ressorti et que nos besoins n'étaient pas nécessairement différents des uns des autres. Donc, combien de fois ces derniers temps avons-nous vu des témoignages ou des leaders qui affichent des vidéos d'eux-mêmes en vidéoconférence avec leurs enfants ou des enfants qui passent, et puis pour normaliser un peu plus la situation, et puis quelque chose qu'on aurait considéré, voilà, un an et demi comme une sorte, un manque de professionnalisme total. Avec l'environnement complexe dans lequel on vit, les employés recherchent justement des leaders qui peuvent leur dire « oui, je te vois ». Et je te comprends, que puis-je faire pour toi? Oui, tu peux prendre cette journée pour t'occuper de ton père qui est malade. Oui, tu peux ajuster ton horaire de travail parce que tu as tes enfants à la maison. Oui, cette capacité de pouvoir se mettre à la place de l'autre a pris une ampleur exponentielle parce que tout d'un coup, la COVID, c'est global. Donc, on se voit d'une façon complètement différente. Et je pense que c'est quelque chose qui va rester. Et tant mieux, parce que c'est ce qu'on recherche chez nos personnes, chez nos collègues, chez nos leaders. Donc, je pense que c'est une compétence qui est là pour rester. Donc, on devrait tous apprendre. Mais il y a une chose que je devrais dire avant de finir. C'est très important pour nous de comprendre que malgré qu'on utilise l'empathie très souvent avec nos collègues et nos employés, il faut connaître nos limites. Il faut savoir qu'on n'est pas des psychologues, on n'est pas des intervenants dans certaines situations. Donc, il faut utiliser les outils de l'organisation, comme comment ça s'appelle encore, le programme d'aide aux employés ou d'autres choses, nos conseillères dans nos organisations. Il faut savoir que nous-mêmes, nous avons nos propres limites. Donc, give it back to you, Maud. That's what I have to say about that. Thank you.
Absolument. Je pense que c'est essentiel qu'on pense à nos limites puis qu'on puisse les établir aussi pour ne pas s'épuiser nous-mêmes. Et donc, je veux juste rappeler à tous les participants que vous pouvez partager vos questions. Plus on aura de questions, plus on pourra passer de temps à répondre à vos questions. C'est vraiment l'essence même de cette séance. Don't forget that you can share your question in the Q&A. And we really want to answer your questions. So don't be shy to share them already. I'll move forward asking a question to Natasha about like, how can I go about gaining trust of my employer to do the work I want to do? And I especially have interest in that as a new employee. I'm still quite new in the government, so I would love to benefit from your advice on this.
Well, it's funny because I feel like you and I have the same skill set, Maud, because as free agents, we've had the opportunity to practice this skill to help build trust and culture right at the onset when we're onboarding with a hiring manager. And sometimes it's good to do this midway through, just to do a rescan, or reevaluate, or reset, just to make sure that everything is aligned. It's definitely something that I had to learn, and I had to learn through failing a few times too. And there's other times when I've asked colleagues, other free agents and mentors what has worked for them. I've had some great, excellent mentors, actually, like Charlie from PCO, who's worked with me in public service renewal, and all of my team there. It's been a continuous learning journey for me, and I really have learned as I went. So I don't claim to know the answer, the official answer on this, and because I'm sure I'm going to learn more and do better over time and grow. But here's what I do know. When I start any assignment, I start with a conversation with any potential hiring manager. I scan to see if I think this manager has the style that I would work well with, but as well as would I make a good fit from a skills point of view, and also a cultural point of view. It's kind of like a double interview, I guess, now that I think about it. They're interviewing me, but I'm also getting really good data from them. I'm looking to see, can I do the work that will contribute to the unit in a way that feels meaningful to the manager and to myself? Will I be able to do good work and be trusted to do that work? I mean, Charlie mentioned trust previously, and I think that's a huge thing. Gone are the days of clocking in and clocking out and having to be at our desk between the hours of 8 to 4. Now we're in this new normal where we have the flexibility to work in a way that works best for you, for the work unit, in a way that's trusted and valued because you're producing good work outputs. So to me, that's the new normal. And so to answer your question, I guess I would say, as a new employee, to gain trust with your new hiring manager, talk it out, figure out before joining if this is going to be a mutual beneficial relationship, like we do in real life when we're building relationships, be it friendship or relationships. We do this, we find the right fit. And also do good work. No one will have an issue trusting you if you're doing great things and putting out innovative and creative ideas and standing behind the work that you're doing. Communicate frequently with your colleagues, with your manager, or their manager if you have that kind of organization where you can chat across the spectrum, and find out how they are feeling, what's working for them, and think about how you're contributing to that. Is there something you can change to help contribute to make the system work easier? You can brainstorm with your colleagues or with groups or with other leaders, or maybe your mentor. Maybe there's a different way to evaluate and produce products. So at the end of the day, basically this is the bottom line. If I have anything to say, at the end of the day, no one's going to come down on someone for trying. And if you're trying, you're trusted and empathy is established and you're valued.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a last question to Charlie, and then we're going to move to the question from the floor because we have few. So Charlie, collaboration is essential. What are essential skills to be a good collaborator? What behaviors engage others?
So let me start by potentially talking about an attitude, and I should also preface this is that a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about, much like my two other panelists, is something that we're continuing to learn and continuing to adapt our styles as we grow, as we learn, and as we listen more, as we see how other people are approaching some of the similar circumstances. So I'm still learning as well. But one of the things that interestingly enough, I was talking to my ADM the other day, and one of the things that came out on top when it came to collaboration, one of the big examples I could really pull from, not to mention innovation fair again, is the can-do attitude, is the ability to be open, to be like, hey, why can't this be done? We know that in the public service there is a structure in place. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. But what in the midst of all that, how could we instill the belief that, hey, why can't things be done? And I think if there is one thing that I could show, and then I'm the living example, is that innovation fair from all fronts seems like something that would not happen without very much resources we're really pulling in from the in-kind services and the amazing collaborators, including the Federal Youth Network, and the ability to do so. And one of the things, it really flows from that, the can-do attitude, the things that I mentioned before, even more important now, the ability to be open, to listen to others, to build trust. And in all of that, in the midst of all of that, is how you break down silos, is then that there is common belief that yes, we could get this thing done, and that we could share the idea that something as engaging as this is possible. And that's where I truly genuinely believe, coming back to the ability to empathize and the ability to be open to new ideas, and building trust and breaking down silos and ensuring that we're working across all levels, is really at the forefront. And I couldn't stress that enough in terms of what it is that's really important to me when it comes to collaboration. And the behaviors there really is to the ability to ask questions, to be open to questions, to understand where we're trying to get to, and what are the barriers right off the top. I think a lot of people are well, barriers might be a negative things to approach in firsthand. No, like that's something that it's good to recognize. It gives us the parameters, and it gives us the opportunity to push. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Charlie. So now I'm gonna ask you some questions we received in the Q&A. So first one is, in your opinion, what are the key elements of modernizing GC? With AI getting to a point where a lot of the work we do will be automated, what should we keep in mind to remain relevant in this changing world? So with AI, how can we like modernize GC and stay relevant? Who wants to tackle this one first?
I'm happy to take a stab. So then like more wise and smarter answers will follow mine. But one of the things that we should always look at when it comes to a question like this, I think that's undeniable. That there are a lot of things are moving very fast, especially right now over the past few years. But one of the things that we're looking at are the fundamentals. And that's where Beyond 2020 came about, was that in 2019, end of 2018, when we were consulting, those were the things that came up. It was like, hey, those are the inevitable things that are coming up. But do we have the fundamentals? Have we done our homework? Do we have the prerequisites, if you will, to look at those things? And that's where the mindsets and behaviors really underline that. Like, are we ready for that type of change? And maybe in some instances we're not. And then there comes the idea of engagement and awareness. How do you engage on these technologies to know that where it is the most effective? In some cases it might not be. There's so much nuance to the things that we do, right? That rely on human to human. There's so much nuance in the way we're just talking right now that AI might not be effective. Then the next step is the awareness. Is how do we build that in, so then we could work around it, and we could work hand in hand in those instances. So I think it's for sure confronted head on, for sure, but also to be able to consult on it, to ensure that we know where it could be the most effective for us, but also to understand that we as a workforce, where we could be agile, so that we know how to incorporate technologies like that. So hopefully that's a start. Thanks.
Sasha Dianabu, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I can add a little bit there that, in all of that, right, Charlie mentioned good points there. And we need to think about the cultural piece, right? When I say culture, I'm thinking about the whole organization here. Like, we are so into, we are used to doing things in a certain way. And not everybody's there yet, when it comes to changing those mindsets, right? And it can be something as easy as working remotely. Right now we are doing it, but it's not everybody's still convinced of that, right? But we do know that it works, in certain. I'm answering in English. Okay, I can do it in French. Sorry, I forgot. Donc, c'est ça. On a besoin de faire un petit changement de culture, un changement culturel complètement au niveau de l'organisation. Comme il y a encore des mentalités qui sont très figées, qui n'arrivent pas à saisir l'opportunité qu'on a aujourd'hui de vraiment pousser un peu plus la donne et puis de passer à autre chose. Donc, on a la technologie, oui, elle est là, elle n'est pas parfaite encore, mais l'être humain est encore un peu en arrière de cette évolution. Donc, même si on prend l'exemple du télétravail, on le fait présentement et tous, mais ce n'est pas tout le monde qui est convaincu qu'ils veulent continuer dans ce sens. Mais alors, on le sait que c'est quelque chose qu'on devrait continuer parce qu'on n'aura peut-être pas le choix, mais de le continuer. Donc, comment est-ce qu'on change les mentalités des gens pour les faire comprendre que c'est la nouvelle façon de faire les choses et qu'il va falloir développer une certaine confiance et une certaine confiance envers nous-mêmes et nos employés pour pouvoir s'adapter à la nouvelle réalité. Mais je pense que la culture organisationnelle va jouer un grand rôle là-dedans.
Oui, merci. Puis, on va être agile dans les langues officielles, donc on va passer de l'une à l'autre sans problème. Yes, Natasha, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, in terms of modernizing, technology in the government of Canada, like the last 2 years has been a complete change. If I think of the way I used to work when I worked remotely, and I think about how I work today and I'm working remotely, it's night and day. I'm no longer using WebEx. I don't have a phone and, the internet at the same time going where I sometimes can connect either one or the other, but sometimes it was never both. When I was working remotely, I was one of a very small number of us who were doing it this way and being included at the table for those conversations. Sometimes I was an afterthought because I'm not physically there to people remember me. So when it comes to modernizing the GC and automating things, I think we've done an excellent job so far. And I can only see that it's getting better. I think that keeping it relevant in the changing world that's the question here, how can we keep it in mind? And I think we've done that. I think we've kept it very relevant, and the world is changing, and we are meeting the need. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. I have 100 ideas. I'm sure everybody has 100 ideas, and I think at this point everything's on the table. Nothing has been decided, but nothing has been eliminated. They're looking at everything across the system right now. And that, for me, as someone who's working in London, Ontario, far, far away from the center, offers me so much hope. So, what do we keep in mind? I guess keep in mind that there's people at the center and we're all hopeful. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. And someone saying that by definition, governments tends to be risk averse and cautious. And so to echo what you were saying, Natasha, how do we actually change the culture of an organization to focus on trust and empathy and creativity in this context?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that has to happen in the back end when change is happening. And I think the modernization is across the system right now. Everyone is examining it, and this former bureaucracy that existed is also modernizing. The mindsets and behaviors aren't just shifting, at the middle level. They're shifting everywhere. And so I think that, just to continue on with my previous sort of comment that I made before, I think that's what is making the change so meaningful for the people who are working in the seats right now. So, maybe Deanne Bao or Charlie might want to add to that.
Je pense que les organisations font beaucoup d'efforts. Moi, si je prends l'exemple de mon organisation, de mes 2 organisations, Conseil de recherche en sciences naturelles en génie et puis Conseil de recherche en sciences humaines, on travaille constamment sur justement la gestion de changement là, pour pouvoir rencontrer les exigences de demain. Donc, on sait que c'est une réalité, on sait qu'on travaille de la maison, on sait que ça va continuer. Donc, comment est-ce qu'on peut faire? Et puis, beaucoup de formations, beaucoup de discussions, beaucoup de consultations entre les employés, les gestionnaires, la haute direction. Donc, c'est constamment des discussions pour pouvoir s'assurer et aussi faire des enquêtes internes et tout, s'assurer qu'on écoute les employés et qu'on incorpore leur volonté dans la situation. Donc, c'est pas facile à faire, donc, parce que les organisations restent que c'est des organisations. Ils ont des objectifs à rencontrer. Mais je pense que c'est une discussion qui a commencé dans toutes les organisations. Et comme Natacha l'a dit, moi, je vois aussi la lumière au bout du tunnel. I'm very hopeful. Donc, je pense que on fait beaucoup de progrès, mais il reste du travail à faire. Mais je suis confiante qu'on ira.
Polly, would you like to add anything about how we can change a culture?
I think culture is that's such a big question, and then sometimes it's quite an organic one, just because we know that culture differs from section to section within a branch, from branch to branch, from department to agencies, right? And so that's why I think oftentimes you hear even the three of us now. I don't want to put words in my panelists' mouths. But that's where really mindsets and behaviors come in, is that yes, there might be a certain type of culture. Yes, there might be a certain ways of working things, but that doesn't mean that we don't have agency over what it is that we believe in. And how do we push that? How do we push that is to understand, is to again listen, is to get an idea of what the situation is like. Things are often the way they are, not because we wanted them to be that way. There might be reasons, there might be circumstances that led to a certain outcome. Now, is that good or bad? That's not always up for us to say. But is there for us a way to us to question, to push our managers, to make sure that our managers gives us a space to speak up, so that we are able to continue to push towards those directions that we're looking for, that we truly believe in. I think that's really where the start is. Thanks.
Thank you. Now I'm going to shift for a question for you ladies. Donc, un peu plus à propos de votre rôle de maman et comment vous pouvez concilier tout ça. Peut-être une question un peu plus pratique sur comment vous mettez vous-même de l'avant ces mentalités et ces comportements. Alors, d'abord Diana Bou, comment est-ce que tu as réussi avec la gestion enfant-famille à te rendre où tu es? Et puis Natacha, on aimerait savoir à quoi ça ressemble une journée de travail pour toi avec tout ce qui se passe dans ta vie. Alors Diana Bou, si tu veux commencer.
Je ne sais pas si je l'ai réussi encore, mais je peux dire ce que je fais jusqu'ici. Je sais que c'est très difficile à faire. Et voilà, c'est deux choses. Non seulement c'est moi, mais aussi c'est l'organisation dans laquelle je travaille. Et c'est une organisation qui valorise le travail, l'équilibre famille-travail, n'est-ce pas? Donc, et c'est pas juste le dire, c'est actuellement vraiment agir en conséquence, n'est-ce pas? Mais aussi à toi-même aussi. Est-ce que tu es capable dans le rôle où est-ce que tu es de te faire des limites? N'est-ce pas? Et puis te dire, c'est pas donné à tout le monde. Est-ce que tu peux dire, OK, à 17h30, ma journée est finie. Alors, je l'ai commencé plus tôt. Là, c'est le temps pour ma famille, n'est-ce pas? Donc, et quand je finis. Je ferme tout, ordinateur, téléphone, et puis voilà. Donc, je sais que c'est pas facile. Tout dépend de ton niveau de responsabilité dans l'organisation et la manière dont tu es, tu es en demande ou quoi que ce soit, quelque chose comme ça. Mais je pense que c'est une discussion à avoir constamment avec nos responsables. Moi, par exemple, je discute avec mon superviseur. Est-ce qu'on peut s'entendre sur certaines choses, n'est-ce pas? Donc, il y a ça à faire. C'est constamment avoir cette conversation-là, parce que comme je l'ai dit, ce n'est pas donné à tout le monde. Je ne peux pas décider que, ben voilà, je ne le fais pas, n'est-ce pas? Parce qu'on est redevable en quelque sorte. Mais je pense que avec tout ce qui s'est passé avec la pandémie, je pense que c'est une discussion qui a ressurgi et puis qui est beaucoup plus facile à avoir maintenant qu'elle ne l'était. Voilà quelques mois ou une année. Voilà une année. Donc, dans mon cas, moi, ce que je fais et ce qui est acceptable par mon organisation, c'est qu'une fois à 17h et autres, ben voilà, je peux fermer boutique et puis je peux m'occuper de ma famille. Mais n'empêche que, comme j'ai dit, ça devrait faire partie de tes discussions tous les jours. Comme j'ai dit, comme on a parlé de l'empathie aujourd'hui, moi, pour mes employés, et puis tu fais une entente. Est-ce que je commence plus tôt? Est-ce que je peux finir plus tôt? Demain, je peux refaire 1 heure ici et là. Donc, il y a cette flexibilité-là dans ce qu'on fait aujourd'hui. Le travail peut se faire toujours, mais c'est comment tu fais le travail que tu peux réajuster ta façon de faire le travail. Tu n'es plus obligé de commencer à 8 heures jusqu'à 5 heures. Tu peux avoir des périodes de temps où tu peux avoir des périodes libres où est-ce que tu peux faire autre chose, mais tant et aussi longtemps que tu as une certaine rentabilité, je pense que c'est OK. Et on le voit maintenant avec le travail à distance, qu'on est encore en mesure d'avoir une rentabilité et puis une productivité, j'allais dire, malgré la façon dont on travaille. Donc, je pense que c'est une discussion constante.
What about
Exactly.
you, Natasha?
It's a hard question to answer because, like, I offer an entire hour-long session on how to parent and work at the same time and how to, like, really get through those blurred lines. Because, you know, we used to work from home, but now we're living at work. So it's a little bit different. And the way that we have to work and manage our days, it has to be done in that flexible way, like Dianbu said. So for me, like, what does a day look like? It varies. It's flexible each day. It depends on if there's a lockdown, if my kids are home, if my kids are in school, if, you know, I have a deliverable that's absolutely dire, or if I can be a little more flexible and stretch that out a little bit. What I do try to do when I'm working in my work days is I try to communicate with my family where there are gaps so they know when they can talk to me and when they shouldn't interrupt. I gave them, you know, there's only one home with me right now, but I gave them the heads up that I was presenting today and it wasn't a good time to interrupt me from this time to this time. But any time in between was okay because I was just working on other documents that I could pause from if they needed me, should there be an emergency or what have you. Sometimes it's because they need me to support them with their virtual learning. Sometimes it's because they're hungry. Like, it can be anything. It really does look different every single day. So, like, to answer the question, what is a regular work day for me? There is no regular work day. It is very flexible. Because of that, I have to have a flexible employer. So, you know, and working remotely prior to the pandemic, there was a little less flexibility needed because my kids weren't home and it wasn't a pandemic and they were at school. But there still was a little bit of flexibility in the sense that they didn't leave the house till 9 and I started my workday at 8. So there was an hour there. And they got home at 3:30 and I finished at 4:30. So there was an hour there. So, you know, as long as you can have that communication with your family to outline sort of like parameters of what's working and what's not working, and with your employer, letting them know that you need a little bit more support in terms of the flexibility, then I think you can manage your way through it. You know, I've come up with sort of tips to try and get through it as a mom. And, you know, those are also evergreen and always changing depending on the flavor of the pandemic and what's happening in my province on that day at that time. So I think really just being agile, being flexible, and also too, I cannot stress, like Dianbu said, at the end of the day, shut down your computer and walk away, because that's a really good signal to your family that now you're there for them, and whatever needs that they have as a mom, as a dad, as a grandma, you're there to provide that for them. And that is super important too.
Et je peux vous dire, en tant que femme sans enfants, jeune femme sans enfants, vous êtes des super héroïnes. Je ne sais pas comment vous faites, mais sérieusement, je vous lève mon chapeau. We have a question from Natalie saying that she's a CR4 from New Brunswick, and she recently won an award for innovation and creativity. And she's wondering how she can transition to another job, more creative role, when there are no current job posting that align with her strength and employment goals. And it's her example, but I'm pretty sure that it happens for a lot of people in the audience right now, trying to find something that fits them more, but there's no job posting across all regions. So what would be your answer for Natalie?
Are you asking me?
It's an open question. Yeah,
I'll start, since I do this when I'm switching positions, you know, when I'm from the regions, I have a little bit of experience. You know, when I'm preparing for offboarding and onboarding into another organization, and I'm thinking about, you know, the kind of work that I want to do, I really up my social media game. And that's when I turn to LinkedIn, Twitter, you know, the jobs.gc.ca website, and I reach out to jobs that I think might fit for me. And like I mentioned before, it's kind of like a double interview. I'm asking them what they like to do and what their culture is like and the kind of work that they're doing, at the same time as they're asking me the exact same questions, you know, the kind of work that I do and what my expertise is. And we can see if we match and create that organic sort of look and feel of what a nice healthy work environment could be. But like prior to getting to that interview phase, like how do I find someone? It's really just by going out and creating that network. I've built a network now that I think that is sustainable for me to like navigate through the GC system. But sometimes I'm emailing the GC jobs.gc.ca poster saying, are you really only looking for NCR? Because it's 2021 and the pandemic happened and it's different now. And usually I get a response back right away saying, please apply. It's open to everyone. I know it says closed, but we did the paperwork, a year and a half ago, not knowing that the pandemic was going to happen, and we're totally flexible. And so like just being brave and curious enough to like reach out to these people and start a dialogue, I think is really a good way to start. If you're really innovative and creative, you'll figure it out. And congratulations on the award.
Charlie, would you like to add anything, or Dianabu?
I'll just add really quickly, in addition to what Natasha said, and is that talk to people about your situation, including your own manager. Oftentimes, sometimes we don't always land the position that we want right off the bat, and people say this a lot, and it does sound cliche, but it is how do you carve your current work to fit some of what you want to do? Is there some elements where it aligns with what it is that you want to achieve? And maybe there is. And Natalie, you won that award not by accident. You won that award by doing what you're doing just now too. So there must be a way that you can continue that conversation with your manager and maybe find other ways. But then the other two, then again, like Natasha was saying, the network is really, really key, because it allows you to talk to other people who may have similar experiences, or those who are going through the same situation, or those who have done it and who could provide a piece of advice maybe. And then there, I would connect that with maybe looking for a mentor, just to be able to bounce ideas, to be able to iterate where you are. If there are things that are rubbing points, there are things that you think you could do better. Sometimes it's great to have a mentor just hear you out and provide constructive criticism. That's things that you might not like to hear from time to time, but are important where you are, especially starting out and looking for more opportunities. Thanks.
J'ajouterais juste une dernière chose aussi, avant de trouver quelque chose à l'extérieur aussi. À l'intérieur, on peut, par exemple, aussi, comme Charlie l'a dit et Natacha, oui, parler à ton superviseur et puis voir qu'est-ce qu'il y a comme opportunité d'affectation temporaire, ou juste peut-être un projet qu'une autre équipe travaille. Peut-être tu peux soutenir ce projet-là, aller y mettre ton petit grain d'œuf et laisser ta trace. Donc, juste t'exposer un peu plus en dehors de ton environnement ou ce que tu es, ça permet d'élargir tes horizons un peu et puis te faire remarquer par les autres. Ça aide aussi, en plus de tout ce dont Natacha et Charlie ont parlé.
Yes, and echoing what Charlie just said about network, I just want to state that there's Young Professional Network in every region, including New Brunswick. And so shameless plug about Young Professional Network. I invite you to check out this. It's a good way to connect with people outside your organization in your region. On a une prochaine question à propos de la structure des ministères. Donc, est-ce qu'on peut penser que les ministères peuvent évoluer vers une structure plus horizontale? Donc, la personne qui pose la question mentionne que son organisation est très hiérarchique et puis que les employés ne sont pas impliqués dans les décisions importantes. Est-ce que c'est une culture qui est trop ancrée au gouvernement pour être modifiée? What do you think? Can we have more horizontal decision-making in our departments? Oui, Dianabu.
En fait, moi, je vais parler plus. J'ai œuvré dans des organisations qui ont beaucoup plus de souplesse, je dirais, mais je pense que de plus en plus, on sent que les employés ont ce besoin d'être impliqués dans certaines choses. C'est soit on peut le faire même pas à travers la hiérarchie, comme la hiérarchie est quelque chose qui n'est pas facile à à changer du jour au lendemain, n'est-ce pas? C'est une structure qui est là, qui est pas facile à démolir ou à changer. Mais je pense que là, on peut faire des petits changements qui peuvent faire un impact, qui peuvent avoir une incidence sur la manière dont on travaille. C'est vraiment ces engagements qu'on fait très souvent quand il y a quelque chose de nouveau et puis on écoute les gens, on partage, on discute. Donc, ça implique les employés en quelque sorte. On ne peut pas toujours faire ça parce que, bon, c'est des gros appareils, n'est-ce pas? Et puis, c'est beaucoup de personnes. Mais on prend le pouls de temps en temps de certaines personnes et on essaye et je vois ça beaucoup dernièrement au niveau du gouvernement où est-ce qu'on essaye d'écouter les gens et c'est important parce que les choses ont changé. Les employés ne veulent plus s'asseoir et qu'on les fasse subir certaines choses. Donc, ils veulent sentir qu'ils font partie de la prise de décision. On n'est pas là encore à 100%, mais je pense qu'on fait quand même des petits pas qui peuvent nous mener à ça, à la longue. Il y a beaucoup de collaboration qui se fait entre les départements et entre les organisations, même à l'interne, et on parle beaucoup aux employés, puis on fait des comités de travail et toutes sortes de choses. Je pense tout ça, c'est dans un optique de faire sentir à l'employé qu'on l'écoute et qu'on est là pour lui. Donc, je laisserai Charlie et Natacha parler plus de l'appareil gouvernemental en tant que tel, mais je vois un petit changement et puis je pense que ça peut faire la différence.
Go ahead, Natasha.
I was going to say Charlie should answer first because I will likely mention what he's going to mention. So I'll let him go and then I'll add any gaps if I see any at the end.
Oh no! So this is about like how do we instill more horizontality into decision makings in organizations, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is where I truly do believe we're trending in the right direction. Oftentimes we're especially through Beyond 2020, we're now asking for managers and senior management to think about when there's discussions at the table, how do you bring a diversity of opinions and views to that so that there are co-creation early on horizontally. And so that's one thing. And so I think that's where a lot of Beyond 2020 champions, those of whom at the more senior level who are influencing renewal at your respective organizations are starting to look out for that. They're like, hey, wait a minute, like we should take the opportunity to listen and to broaden our scopes when we're consulting, when we're looking at ideas. Now, so that's one thing. The second thing to introduce more horizontality, I think the other way is through horizontal networks like the Federal Youth Network. The more we're involved in conversations like this, the more we find out, hey, there are certain things that are happening right now. How could I actively seek for a voice at the table? And so then I believe this is very much two ways. Is that I believe the senior managers, I strongly do believe, and it might not seem apparent that way, that more and more views are being incorporated, number one. But the other way too is to get connected, to seek for those seats. Oftentimes you might not have the opportunity to voice your concern, but you might be able to see the context in which questions and decisions are made. And the context is where it really helps you. Hey, this is where I could input. This is where I probably have no business being involved, right? And so that's where again, going back to empathy, to listening, to understanding context in which we're operating is very, very key. Thanks.
And I'll just add, like, coming from the regions, I worked here in London for like 14 years, never heard of any of the stuff that was happening back in Ottawa. It was so far removed. Then boom, I was a free agent. I started working to Ottawa. And in fact, I got placed in the public service renewal group, and I learned all about the wonderful things that was happening behind the scenes for the modernization and public service renewal as a whole. And I felt it really interesting to know that, I had a champion in my department who knew all about this stuff, that I had a change management strategy. We had, the pillars of agile, equipped, inclusive, ingrained in that change management strategy, and that the modernization was coming from the top down, but it was there, and that strategy existed. I didn't know it at all until I joined working in public service renewals group at PCO, and I felt like it was my job to tell the regions. and spread that. And I think this is where, as an employee, no matter what level you are, CR4, AS4, EX -1, it's our job to sort of share that this change is there, that it's coming, that it's good, and that it's going to crush these silos, and we're going to become more horizontal, and that there is only good things that can come from this cross-pollination across the government spectrum. We're learning from our colleagues, we're sharing with our colleagues, and there's no more duplication of work now. We're starting to collaborate. Like, these, for me, are wonderful things. So if you're like me and you had no idea about any of this, or you work in a region like I do where that information may not be as blatantly obvious because you're in an agency or a smaller department, regional office, it exists. And I implore you to look on the Beyond 2020 webpage. We have a parliamentary secretary on public service renewal who briefs the prime minister. There's a system there and it's happening. It's just maybe you don't know about it. Maybe your manager doesn't know about it. And that's where I feel like we as public servants have a job to help share that information.
Thank you for your answer. So we have a little less than 5 minutes. Il nous reste un peu moins de 5 minutes. We still have very good question in the Q&A. Maybe we're gonna have time for one more if you can be a little brief on this answer. But I think it's a very important one. So how can we maintain a positive mindset when constant change can be overwhelming? And God knows that we all been overwhelmed in the past year with all what was happening, and it was a very very anxious times we're going through. So how did you maintain a positive mindset?
I'll go ahead. For myself, it's looking for opportunities when things feel heavy. So, we went through a pandemic and immediately people were feeling disconnected. They were not understanding how to work remotely. There was an opportunity there for me as someone who's a remote employee to be able to share what I know to help people get through it. So whenever there's something that seems dark or heavy, there's always an opportunity that you can look for where you can add some positive sort of influence or insights or ideas. And, this is something that I think right now that we as a government of Canada need. We need those ideas, we need that positivity, and we need to be able to transition through this sort of weird time that feels heavy, but really there are many opportunities that are inside of that heaviness that are sort of hidden. So for me, I would say in my short answer, look for the opportunity.
Charlie, would you like to add anything on that? And Zianabu, I'm going to keep you for last.
Awesome, thank you. So I think positivity. There are a few ways to look at it, right? Are you asking about positivity in terms of looking at work? And I think this is where, again, I keep coming back to communication. It's okay to communicate that. Oh my gosh, there's so many changes. It's quite overwhelming, and it's the ability to articulate that. That's where the seeking to understand more where the situation that is better to help you. Now, it may not help you maintain the positivity, because that's something that I think we're all in this together. The idea that we all have ups and downs, and everyone's human. Even the managers and senior managers, the deputy ministers that you talk to, oftentimes we're all human, right? And so I think everyone is fighting through this, especially given the circumstances right now. And the best way to go at it is to communicate, to listen to others, to share experiences. I think that's where you'll come out to be a little bit more understanding, and maybe working your way towards that positivity. You might not get there right away, but it will be a step in the right direction.
Zianabu, en moins de 2 minutes, quels seraient tes conseils?
Oui, je fais bien. Je sais que c'est très difficile présentement de nous retrouver physiquement, on ne peut même pas. Donc, je dirais plus essayer de garder quand même un certain lien avec la famille et puis les collègues, et puis s'entourer en quelque sorte, même si c'est virtuel, mais quand même s'entourer de personnes, avoir une personne à qui parler quand les choses deviennent vraiment très lourdes. très lourde. Et puis, au niveau du travail, je veux dire, nous, en tant que leaders ou fonctionnaires et tout, essayer de garder ce lien avec nos employés aussi, d'être là, c'est un petit moment ici et là pour chercher à savoir comment est-ce qu'ils vont. Et puis, je pense que ça fait plaisir à l'être humain de savoir que quelqu'un se soucie de lui. Donc, être juste, avoir ce petit lien humain, même s'il est virtuel, il est difficile, mais quand même le garder là parce qu'il nous soude, il nous tient, il nous réconforte et puis on en a besoin pour garder le moral dans une situation aussi complexe et aussi difficile que celle qu'on vit. Mais je pense qu'on est capable. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, je tiens à remercier nos 3 panélistes, Charlie, Natasha et Diana Bou. Vous avez eu leur contact LinkedIn dans le chat au début. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Also, don't forget to register for the next event every Thursday. Assurez-vous de vous inscrire aux prochains événements qui ont lieu chaque mardi. Merci à tous et on vous souhaite une bonne fin de journée.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.